So I came across this video on CNBC, very insightful. Watched it back maybe I watched it back 3 times. Pay attention. Nothing that you need to hear me comment, but I just thought it was so useful that I passed it along to you guys.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Andrew. So Walmart has said tariffs could make its margins look better than they actually are because of its accounting method. Let me explain why. So retailers use 2 different methods of accounting. Cost accounting, which uses the actual cost of every item, and the retail method of accounting, or RIM, which uses an average cost to price ratio. So PwC estimates about a quarter of retailers use RIM, including the aforementioned Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and Dollar Tree. So in the short term, using RIM, while costs increase from tariffs, could overstate profitability for retailers because it takes several quarters for the cost volatility to average out. In fact, the more costs that a retailer absorbs, you see cost gets bigger here, the more that profitability in the quarter could be overstated because that ratio gets higher. So here's a simplified example, thanks to help from PwC. So our base case uses 3 different T-shirts from 3 different countries. Each have a different cost, they have a different retail price, and then they're bought and sold at different quantities by the retailer and ultimately the consumer. So the gross margin here, using weighted cost average accounting, is about 46%, and then 53% using RIM. So it's already different. Now, if the only thing that changes is that the retailer's cost for each of those T-shirts goes up because of the result of the tariff rate, and all else stays the same, so you can see the cost is now higher here, gross margin falls. So in our example, it falls to 30% in cost accounting and 39% in RIM. So you see that differential is actually getting bigger. Now, if the retailer passes on the full dollar value of that tariff cost into the retail price, you can see here prices have now gone up, but the units bought and sold stay the same. What happens to gross margin? Well, yeah, it improves for both to 36% for cost accounting, 47% in RIM in our example, both below that base case for tariffs. But again, look at the differential. It's actually getting even bigger. Now, if the retailer buys the same amount at the higher tariff cost, passes on the full dollar value in prices like our last example, but then ultimately sells fewer items to consumers at that higher price, gross margin falls in cost accounting to the lowest level yet, 27% in our example. But it stays the same for RIM, even with fewer units sold, because the ratio of that cost of goods sold to profit margin hasn't had time to adjust. Andrew?
Okay. How much do you think you're actually going to hear from all these retailers? Maybe not in the previous numbers, but given the politics of actually saying aloud, we plan on raising prices, how much do you think they'll actually say it directly?
So I think what we've been told from the different accounting firms that we spoke to, if the retail method of accounting does largely impact or materially impact their results, retailers are going to have to describe that. They're going to have to somewhat explain that in the results, because it could be, if that's the case, that profit margins look temporarily inflated, but then over time could fall. In fact, they could fall really sharply before then they ultimately average out. So we could take 2 to 4 quarters. So I think it just depends to the rate at which we're going to see. Now, what's interesting is that, of course, we did not see tariffs go up to, say, that 145% that was a possibility, we thought, with China. Yes, tariffs did increase during some point in the quarter, but maybe not to the degree that was feared when a retailer like Walmart first started warning and talking about this. So it may not be as drastic, but it may be there a little bit. So I think we just need to keep that in mind when we're looking at the different retail profit margins this quarter and then the next several.